Okay, before we get to LSU, I think it's important that we talk about Veterans Day, and obviously this weekend is our opportunity to salute those who serve. I do think that in general, this is a day to come together and pay tribute to a lot of brave people who have selflessly served in our armed forces. I think sometimes some of these freedoms that we have, the way of life that we have, we take for granted. And most of the time, adults understand the importance, but I think we feel obligated to help educate our players. We'll have a speaker come in each day of the week this week from each branch of our military. And I think ultimately we need to show gratitude for their service. And it's important for them to know what military life is like. Acknowledge our veterans from the past. That level of sacrifice that I think is very special. And we need to continue to honor the men and women who serve in our military, who have served and who continue to serve. And there's values that need to be taught in terms of patriotism, empathy, gratitude. So today's an important day for a lot of reasons, and certainly we're going to take advantage of this week, and we look forward to this weekend. I do think LSU, as usual, has a good football team. I think they're talented. Obviously, they've had their ups and downs throughout the season. Coach Kelly runs a good program. They've overhauled the defensive staff, and certainly a veteran quarterback, although a first-time starter, has significant experience, has been in the program, been in the system with Nussmeier. Really unique kick returner and punt returner that can be a challenge. And overall, the personnel that you would expect from an LSU team. So the combination of all this, we do anticipate getting healthier. Hopeful to get a handful of these guys back this week. And we had a lot of them that were close to being available this past Saturday that didn't quite turn around in time. But in general, a very important week. We're excited to be back home and look forward to the challenge here and playing this LSU team. What questions do we have?
Could some of those guys that you had on the injured list, had it been a championship game last week, would they have been kind that they could have played if it was one of those nothing to lose type situation?
I don't think so. I think all those guys, Badger, Montrell, Damian, Devin, DJ, I'm trying to think of some of the others, but in general, I think they would have been game time decisions if that were the case. So even those guys that were listed that way, I think after watching pregame, they weren't ready to go. So big picture, we got a bunch of guys. They would do they're doing everything humanly possible to play. I think that's one of the things I respect about the group. And we had a bunch of guys play banged up, to be quite honest with you. So in general, I think we got out of that game, and we're hopeful that we get some of these guys back.
Jim was saying he's never been around so many injuries in game a couple of games ago, but is this the most banged up roster you've had in 7 seasons?
I think we're just a little more aware of it because we get an injury report Wednesday, Thursday, Friday at 90 minutes before the game, So, but look, your depth is always going to be challenged. And when you play in this league, and certainly with our non-conference schedule, we have played a very competitive schedule. So I think we're more equipped probably than we have been. We're just playing with threes in some spots, so that's ultimately what I would say. Typically, your twos are going to play at every position throughout the year. Very rarely does a starter just, play front to back the whole time. You're always going to have a little bit of that. So when you get to your third, that's when you ultimately, that's unique.
You have a fourth at quarterback?
Yeah, no, Clay is.
Did you consider at any point maybe just trying kicking the tires on him when the team's struggling the other day?
I don't necessarily think. No. I think ultimately, a lot of that, I think we were very aware of what was happening. It wasn't necessarily Aiden as much as just in general. I think we can play better around him at times, and then it is what it is at that point. I mean, you can only get so many people ready to play.
I know the season isn't over yet, but I mean, to this point, how do you self-assess things like play calling, offensive game planning from week to week where you are right now?
I'm not ready to do any of that. I'm focused on LSU right now.
On the quarterbacks, how important will that be, especially this offseason, to fill out that unit with 4 guys? You've mentioned that in the past, that's kind of the number that you want to be at scholarship-wise at that position.
Yeah, no, it's a position where we'll add players for sure. You know, we're in the process of doing that. And that can be a challenge when you have a really talented young player, right? So I think it's important. I mean, it's a big piece of the puzzle. We've been grinding away on it for a long time.
How much of that, given the landscape of college sports right now, how much of that has to occur now during the season when you are trying to prepare for games? Are you already at a point where you're looking at potential guys who have a future in the portal, or how does that work?
Yeah, I think what you're describing there is definitely a piece of the puzzle here down the stretch. I think the combination of early signing period and the portal window paired with November football and how competitive and important these games are, that is one of the more challenging things about college football right now. And I think every coach has expressed that publicly. So we have extensive, our personnel department is working around the clock. I mean, we have windows of time where we evaluate players every week. Just this week, I'll be up here Wednesday night. I'll be up here early Friday morning. Those are my 2 blocks of time each week. So those guys are grinding around the clock, and then obviously the coaches as well, and then that gets funneled to me. So, yeah, 2 times a week we have blocks for evaluating players. And what you're describing, it becomes even more, there's just more, whatever you want to call it, rumors or anticipation. I think some of that starts to ramp up in November.
How much progress has DJ made in the 48 hours since pregame, and do you anticipate him practicing or being able to practice more than individual drills starting today?
Yeah. Well, the good thing is we worked him out this morning, and we felt good about what we saw, So now, does that mean he's 100%? I don't necessarily. Soft tissue is a very subjective injury. I think it's day to day, but we do anticipate him practicing today.
To follow up on Jacob's question, are you spending more time evaluating, like in your 2 blocks? Is that different than previous years?
No. I think you've got to watch senior tape on guys. You have to get out in front of portal opportunities, and then obviously sometimes it's 26s that are pressing, if that makes sense. So just in general, I think the key is that you've got to self-discipline and follow through every week, and you got to have a process. It's year-round. Our blocks of time are year-round at this point.
We went through a stretch in kind of late September, early October where the tight ends were really involved in the passing game. How do you try to get them back involved here, maybe this late stretch?
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think about that as well. I do think that we need to be a little bit more intentional. I think sometimes it's structure on defense, where the matchups are, what are the fronts, the protections, the pressures. Obviously, the coverage is a big piece of that as well. But we definitely want to get those guys more involved, and that's a big piece of the puzzle here in the next couple of weeks.
Before Scott gave you the vote of confidence last week, did you guys sit down and have conversations about where this is headed, and maybe potentially, I know you don't want to get into staff changes, but like things that you want to see different moving forward or expect to see different moving forward?
Yeah, I think it'll be much like most years that I've been a head coach. I think that we kind of back up and take a big picture look at the organization as a whole. What areas are thriving, what areas need to be revamped. And look, there's an evolution to the game, in terms of how you format the organization, the job descriptions, the workflows. And a big piece of that puzzle is the revenue share that begins on July 1st, right? So just the front office component I think making progress towards that. And then you're always going to evaluate the nuts and bolts, right? The coaching, the development piece. I mean, I think we've made a few changes each year. I think it'll be the same this year.
Did you expect that?
Say that again.
Did you expect that from Scott?
You know, in season, man, I'm grinding. I'm trying to get the most out of our players. You know, what I would say about it is I think that it's a reflection of our players. I mean, we don't get it done. We don't show signs of improvement. And look, let me say this. I am absolutely not satisfied with how we've played. Now, we've done some good things, but, I mean, it's nowhere close to what it's got to be consistently for us to be a contender. And that's ultimately what I'm spending my time on. But any belief or hope or confidence in what we can become is due to the players and the way they performed the last 5 or 6 weeks. So we need to continue to improve.
Does it alleviate back of mind thinking? I mean, you're human.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, what I'm trying to do is, I'm trying to do my best, man. I mean, I would say my obligation is to the players. I want to see them have success on the field, off the field. But ultimately, when you're in the middle of the season, you're trying to put that puzzle together every week for the players. And that's all parts. You know, that's motivating leadership. That's strategy. That's kind of directing the organization as a whole. So, yeah, I mean, I think for me, other things motivate me. I'm not necessarily worried about that much.
Where did you learn to kind of block out distractions? I mean, you seem like kind of different than a lot of people in that respect.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's I think ultimately for me, it's about purpose. View coaching in that regard relative to, I think it's stewardship. It's an obligation to do the best for your people, staff included. You know, and I think you have to model what you would want from the players, and I think consistency is important. But look, I mean, if we're all over the place and we're motivated by external things and we're distracted and we lack self-discipline and we're not everyday people, then I think that's ultimately we have to rub off on the players and we have to model what we would want from the players. Now, we've done a good job of that at times, but we've been very inconsistent. So, yeah, we're getting closer is what I would say. I see the light at the end of the tunnel. You know, I think obviously disappointed with Saturday to some degree, but I do think our group is trending in the right direction. But we're not there yet.
I mean, how much did you spend Sunday going over that Texas tape? And was there anything else did you glean in terms of the slow start, the fact that you guys got down 42-0?
Yeah, no, I think we combed it like never before. You know, I mean, I think ultimately for me, it turned the ball over 3 times. Didn't defend them very well. Matchups were not good. You know, we got to focus on the things that we can control. You know, our fundamentals, our communication, our leverage, our tackling, our protection, our decision-making at quarterback. I mean, that's what we got to focus on, and that's ultimately what caused the problems.
Tackling, you pointed out, wasn't very good, but I think on 7 of their touchdowns, 5 of them were guys not touched.
Correct.
Like, is that blowing assignments on the back end? Is that lack of pass? Can you put your finger on common theme maybe?
Yeah, no, I think, all of those were a little bit of some communication errors, some missed assignments. And then I think just in general on the perimeter, I think we didn't tackle well. You know, we missed tackles at inside backer. We missed tackles in the secondary. I thought we played with the wrong leverage on a few occasions. So, yeah, just in general, just basic fundamentals, tackling, leveraging, coverage. And obviously some of those guys, they're out there. They're playing different positions, whatever the case may be, but it is what it is.
With the way that they move guys around, how much was eye discipline a problem in that game? And
Yeah,
how much is that going to be?
That was a huge piece of the puzzle is the adjustments dealing with emotions. I think ultimately some of the issues were relative to that.
How much will play a factor against this Ole Miss, or this LSU offense, excuse me?
Yeah, you're a couple weeks ahead. I'm glad you're not coaching our team. No, I'm joking with you. No, I think, yeah, just in general, I mean, I think the lesson here is what does winning football look like? You know, I think when we've had point of attack wins, we've had good gap integrity, we've communicated well, we've played with the right leverage in the secondary, we've tackled well, you know, in the core, on the perimeter. I think that's when we've had success playing defense. When we haven't done that, it's when we've had issues. So I think to your point, I don't necessarily think that LSU, I think it's a different structure, you know. So, but look, the trend of offensive football is to copy what has worked against you, right? So, and we do that each week. I think that's a big component. You know, what do they have conceptually that's very similar? We're going to make sure we practice those.
Any thoughts on Garrett Nussmeier? Obviously, he had a little stint here in Gainesville playing at Buolds, and then his father. I mean, do you ever cross paths with him and so forth?
Yeah, first of all, his dad is an incredible football coach, one of the best coaches I've ever been around, and just a great human being, great family. I mean, I can remember when Nuss was, you know, running around the Alabama facility. So, yeah, great high school player. I can remember evaluating him coming out, just incredibly productive, just a scrappy coach's son that, you know, has a great feel for the game, right? So, waited his turn, which is respectable in my opinion. And then now, obviously, he's leading their team and has done a good job of that.
When it comes to recruitment, to what extent do you think the uncertainty is playing a role in that?
Yeah.
And has it changed? I mean, what impact will it have now that you have this vote of confidence?
Yeah, it's definitely been one of the uphill battles that we faced, to be quite honest. Probably the only one, to be honest with you. And I think ultimately we're hopeful over the next month or so that really 65 days, I think, before the winter acquisition period is over, whether that's high school or portal. So about 60 days or so where we'll be working extremely hard to add good players to the team. But, yeah, I mean, I think it definitely helps.
We saw Jaden Bach a couple times in Wildcat setups, and he has some experience doing that. How much can that be a factor for you guys as you kind of figure things out at quarterback still?
Well, Jaden obviously did it a lot in high school, right? I think it's one of the more impressive things about him is his ability to manage that. KD is that way as well. He did the same thing in high school. So, look, it's a wrinkle. It worked Saturday. You know, obviously, you know, each week's a little bit different depending on who's available for the game. But, yeah, I mean, I think we've got some of that built. We built some systems for that. And I think, obviously, it's always available. And look, it's something that's another punch list item on the DC's list that he has to work, so it makes it harder to defend.
I guess KD's not on the injury report anymore, so I mean, what's his availability like, and would you consider him? I know there are redshirt implications there and stuff.
Yeah, no, he was the third back Saturday. So, yeah, he's very much in the mix as we're kind of seeing where Montreal's at. And that's a good thing because KD had a good spring. He was very productive in the scrimmages, had a good training camp, so it'll be good for him to be back out there.
Thank you, Coach.
All right. Thank you, guys.